Hi everyone. Welcome to episode 161 of Wool and Spinning. My name is Rachel and it is Sunday, July 26th, 2020. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for spending the time this morning. We are live streaming and we've got our patrons in the chat. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to new viewers of the show. If this is your first time checking out the show, thank you so much for being here. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for sticking with us. And if you're a patron of the show, thank you so much for continuing to support the work that goes on here and for participating. I really appreciate it. We've got a busy chat this morning. I'm just having a look at what everybody's doing. Sharon asked what everybody was making, and Elizabeth's doing the tree ring blanket, which is gorgeous. A couple people are folding laundry. I didn't make my shirt. So Rebecca was wondering if I made the shirt that I'm wearing in the preview picture, but I didn't. I actually bought it, and it's from a big box store. I got a couple. I didn't have any summer shirts, and I needed a couple of things like right now, and so I did purchase a couple of things. I'm just going to move this down a bit. I feel like it's right in my face. So what else is people doing? Sunday morning laundry. Amanda's folding laundry, finishing breakfast, sipping coffee. That's great. I'm actually going to be loading our trailer later. So I have a couple of announcements to make. We have our yarn substitution content that's ongoing in the Patreon content. So we're looking at, in May, looking at the basics and the yarn statistics, how to calculate all your things. And then we looked at substituting a yarn that you've already spun in a knitting pattern. And then this past month in July, so right now, we're looking at how to spin a yarn to replace a yarn called for in a knitting pattern. Next month, we're sort of wrapping it all up with a downloadable PDF for those who pledge as the attentive spinner, just with a couple of formulas and whatnot. And then also I've put the vlogs together as one big one big movie, if you will. So for those who want to watch from beginning to end, you can do that. So that is coming up in August. Really quickly before we go on, in August, traditionally, Mike and I take a couple of weeks in March, December, and again in August, just to unplug and take a break and basically get off grid, if you will. And I wasn't going to do that this year. We didn't do that in March. March ended up, as for everyone, ended up being very odd. But we are going to have a week of unplug in August. So that means that not next Sunday, but the Sunday after, so August 9th, there will not be a show. Just so that you know, August is one of those months where there's 5 Sundays anyways. And so I will be unplugging and there will not be a show on August 9th. So thank you so much for understanding that I need a break too. So Braiding Color Studies is up and running. If you have not bought your kit and you want to participate, the links are in the show notes at patreon.com/WelfordPearls. We started on July 1st, and so for the last half of the year, we're going to be looking at a carded prep, and then, of course, in the first part of the year, if you're new to Braiding Color Studies, we look at combed tops. So this month, this sort of set of colors, we're looking at Greta's photo, which just flashed up at the warmest row. That's Greta, and this is what Katrina came up with. And we're looking at Charolais, and the links for Katrina's shop are in the show notes, but I will also throw them into the live chat for you guys, so you guys can have a look. The July content for How I Spin should be out. Let me have a look. I guess it hasn't come up yet. That's weird. I thought I had it all published already. The transcript went live on the 6th, and the rest of it never came up. Thank you so much for saying something, because it never came up. It didn't publish. I have it here. I will fix that after the show. So thank you so much for saying something, because I would never have known. So thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, so that's breeding color studies. And without further ado, let's get into the show. So I wanted to talk about this package that arrived, and I'm not going to flip it over because it's got my mailing address on it, which I don't mind if some people have, but you know, I don't really want it to go live on YouTube. So this was a package that was sent to me from Sanjo Silk. So I just opened it now, and Diana Sanderson is the owner of Sanjo Silk, and she noted that I've been spinning up some of their samples, and I had recently done a workshop through them, and she was so kind and sent me some samples, and she emailed me and said, I hope it's okay that I've sent you some samples, and you know, have a look at them, and you know, if you want to spin them up, go for it. So I'm really excited to spin this stuff, because it'll give me a little bit more fiber to do something with. So this is super exciting. So she sent me 100 grams of Muga. It looks like it's 100 grams of Muga silk, which is this gorgeous golden color here. That is just beautiful. And then she also sent me 2 50-gram bags of peduncle Tussa silk fiber. So it looks like it's, I'll have to ask her if this is peduncle Tussar or peduncle Tussa. I'm thinking it's actually peduncle Tussar, and that it's not Tussa silk, because it's got that sort of woolly look to it. Oh, this is just beautiful. So I'm excited to spin that up, and thank you so much, Diana, for sending that along. That was very generous and very kind, and completely unexpected. So thank you so much. And I'm excited to spin those. I'm thinking that I will probably, given that she sent me 100 grams, like enough to actually do something with, because silk spins so fine, I'm thinking that I probably will do something where I could spin for like a shawl. So that's really exciting. Yeah. Oh, Dana got her breeding color studies. That's awesome. I'm so glad that people are have already gotten some of their breed and color study, and that they're actually starting to plan what they're going to make already. That's just fantastic. So for July, in the July episode thread, I will link it in the show notes. If you guys can tell me, it's only me, it's no team, what your most challenging spin that you've ever spun. And I'm thinking that I will send out another Friesian bat, because I'm almost done spinning for my shore cardigan. And I pulled off one more skein, which I'll talk about the cardigan later in the show, but I pulled off another skein over the course of this past week. I've been spinning one bat at a time. So I've been dividing it in half. No, I haven't. I've been spinning 2 bats at a time. So 1 bat per bobbin, and then plying it. And so I've spun a total of 5 skeins, and I did my grist this morning and calculated just to see approximately where I was, because I had 2 skeins worth in the sweater already. And it's roughly 330 yards of yarn that I've used thus far. And I have another sort of 500 yards, and I need to do the sleeves, and then I need to do another 8 to 10 inches on the body, because it's quite long at the back. So we'll talk about that knit later, but I think I've got quite a few bats left. So I'll send out another one for July, and then I'll kind of stockpile them for August and make sure that I have enough for my sweater, because I'll finish it while we're away. Well, hopefully I'll get it done before we leave, but we leave on Monday, a week from tomorrow. And so I don't know if I'll finish the knitting this week or not. It depends on our week and how things go. We have our book club going. So book club is looking at 2 books right now. We're doing How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, and that group meets separately once a month towards the end of the month. And we also are doing Persuasion by Jane Austen right now. And that group, I feel like that group is meeting this Friday, but I might be wrong because they meet on the opposite Fridays to the Wool Circle. I had to change the Wool Circle. So it was the Wool Stream, and I've had to change it to the Wool Circle because YouTube just would not stop on Friday mornings interrupting and taking the video down and saying that it was illicit or whatever it is that they look for. So I had to appeal it every single time and they would reinstate it, and it was just causing all sorts of problems. So I decided to just change the name and we'll see if that fixes the problem. So it is now called the Wool Circle. Tour de Fleece finished up last Sunday, which you guys know because we were here and we were chatting and people were finishing up their spinning. So that's fantastic. We have 6 winners to announce. So I had asked people to post their finished spins in the FO thread, but people, I think everybody was just so used to posting on the regular thread that I ended up drawing from that thread. I did take 1 name from the FO thread because some people had posted in there, but there was only like 6 posts. So I took the other 5 prizes out of the main chatter thread, and I felt like it was more sort of showed more who had been present and who was there and who was spinning through the tour. So we have 6 prizes to announce. I don't have them here to show you other than the stitch markers, which is kind of a bummer, but that's okay. The first prize is some BFL from Kelly, and I don't see Kelly today in the chat. Maybe I missed her name, but Kelly's going to send out 2 batches of BFL to 2 different people. So the first winner is actually Rebecca, Rebby J, post number 285. Congratulations, Rebecca. And then from the Tour de Fleece finished objects thread, so the finished yarns thread that I had asked you guys to post your spins on was post number, there was only 18, not 6. Post number 17 was Knitter Mum, which is Kath. Congratulations. So those 2, Kath and Rebecca, you guys have won the BFL. The third prize was Becca's prize. So she's going to send something out from Scotland. And this is going to go to post number 331, which was Critlick, which is Crystal. So congratulations, Crystal, because I know you were spinning some really cool stuff. So congratulations to Rebecca, Kath, and Crystal. And then I had 3 sets of stitch markers to send out. So I had made these during quarantine, and I will turn the camera back on and we'll see if we can get them to, I was getting a lot of glare earlier when I tried to do this. So there's the first set here are these ones here. They've got some sort of pearl beads with some clear amber. And this one is going out to Trudy T. Dev Knits, post number 148. So congratulations, Trudy. And the next one is going out to Tamar, second Zephyr, which is post number 289. I'll send you these blue ones, Tamar. So if you guys could send me your addresses, that would be great. And the third one is going out to Michelle, which is Make Her Win, to 241, post number 241. That's, I think it's actually M. Eckerwin. So it's Michelle, Tamar, and Trudy. If you guys could get in touch with me tomorrow, I'm going to make a note that yours are the blue ones because I told you, I just said that they were going to be for you. So I'll just make a note here. Tamar and Michelle and Trudy. So Trudy, Tamar, and Michelle, if you guys could get in touch with me and send me your addresses. And for Crystal, Kath, and Rebecca, I will get you guys in touch with Kelly. So many congratulations. The last thing that we've got is our Made with Love Along. So our Made with Love Along is actually wrapping up on, what day is it today? It's the 26th. Our Made with Love Along, our cast off date is this Friday. So I'm hoping that next Sunday, in conjunction with Rebecca and Becca, I will have some prizes to draw next weekend as well. We'll have a couple of stitch markers for sure. and we'll do that next weekend. So if you guys could please, 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 between now and next Saturday, get your finished objects into the finished object thread on the Ravelry group for our Made with Love Along, because we will be finishing that up this week. So let's talk about my projects. So I'll move this over to this. This was my Created by LCB Targhee, and this was yarn that I had put into a big pile for a combo spin. And remember I said that how much I didn't like the combo spun yarn. So I divided it all up and I separated it all out. It's actually right over there. As you guys can see, you've probably figured out, because the sound is a little bit different. We're in a different part of the house. So I was telling these guys on the Wool Circle on Friday, last Sunday, we had a family contact us. We'd had our dining room set, including our china cabinet, which used to sit right here, sitting on Craigslist for, well, since the beginning of March. So it was before Rebecca visited, and we had really hoped that we would be able to get rid of it before well, it wasn't really like get rid of it before, like have it go before Rebecca came, but we were really hoping that it would go shortly after, because my mother-in-law was supposed to come and stay with us over Easter in April. So we were going to have Rebecca, and then we were going to have a couple weeks, and then my mother-in-law was going to come. And of course, it all got canceled because of COVID. And anyways, because of COVID, Mike and I think that it was probably because of COVID, our furniture sat and sat and sat and sat. Like, it just absolutely would not move on Craigslist. And we put it for free because we had bought it over 10 years ago. So we've been married, Mike and I, for 13 years in August, and we've been together for 14 years. So in September of this year, we'll be celebrating 14 years. And we had bought the furniture right before we got married, when we were sort of in the process of moving into our apartment in Vancouver together, because I had a studio apartment and he had an apartment in Vancouver. And when he moved out here, he rented a room from a friend who really needed somebody to basically like look after her place, because she wasn't really living there anymore, and she just needed somebody to be there. And so he rented a room, and part of the deal was that he would look after her place, water her plants, that kind of stuff, because we wanted to be like a normal couple for a little while. We wanted to just date for a little while, because we'd been doing the long distance thing, but it's very different when you're finally in the same city and kind of putting your lives together. So we bought our dining room furniture when we were moving into our apartment, and that was in early 2007, and we got married in mid 2007 in August. So the family showed up. They were so lovely. They're new to Canada in the last couple of years, and they were, just trying to find some furniture, and they bought a townhouse near us, and they were so lovely. And so they came in, they did a couple of trips, and Mike actually took our truck and took some of it as well to help them out, and it's all gone. So now we're in the dining room. So the dining room is now this kind of area of the house now. It's a long room. It's a living room, dining room combination. And the dining room area is now sort of like an office. And so there's a bit of an echo. We're going to put a rug down underneath this table just to dampen the noise. And we'll put a rug over there as well to just, because it is echoey in here. I don't think you guys can hear it, but I can. So I did actually manage to finish my mitts. So these are the Crosswise Cadence mitts. They're by Amy Odin. And I actually had some photos queued up to show you. So I think what I'll do is I'll show you those first. And I have the wrong camera going, so just give me a sec to fix the camera. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to be able to. So let me just use the camcorder for a minute, because otherwise there'll be a huge delay in the show. There we go. Sometimes we have to be flexible, right, guys? We just have to make it work. There we go. That's better. and then I'll put it back in a second. So these are the Crosswise Cadence mitts by Amy Odin. And what I really liked about them is that because of the cross hatching along the mitts, it really creates a lot of texture, and you can still see the striping in the mitts, but when you're actually wearing them and they're actually on, they're quite textured, and they actually work quite well. And I was looking at them next to my rain jacket, and I'm actually surprised at how well they work. Now for the thumb, because it's such a small number of stitches, and because it's such a small sort of area where she gets you to work how she gets you to work the thumb gusset, you end up just working like it's something like 5 or 7 rows straight in knit and then cast off. And I thought for sure that it would roll the thumb really badly, but it actually didn't. It actually like kept them quite nice and quite flat, and they're actually like okay. And I, color me surprised, because I thought for sure that they would end up being really challenging. But as you can see, that stockinette stitch up the thumb gusset, and then that straight stitch, I think it's 5 or 7 rows, and then you just cast off, really worked out quite well. It's twisted rib for the cuff and for the bottom cuff, and I'll show them to you wearing them here. And that did hurt my wrist a little bit, having to knit all of that 1 by 1 rib. I find when you have to twist your knit stitch for every time all the way around, and you don't get that break when you're going back and forth with twisted rib, it does hurt my hand after a while doing that, because of how you have to like turn the needle. But it was okay. And I did these on 2.75 millimeter needles, or US 2, and I got a nice fabric. If I was to make these again, I made the medium. I would actually make the smalls next time. I think across the top, the small would be a little bit nicer, because they would fit a little bit tighter. So, and you can see there's some hits of coral in there, and some really nice sort of other colors, if you will, and it worked out quite well. So I'll switch the cameras back so that you can put them on, so you can see them actually in real time, not just in photos. They look so washed out when you put the photos back, when you put the camera back. I'm gonna have to do something with the camcorder, because it on the camcorder display the colors are correct, but then when they're relayed through OBS, they come out not quite right. So I need to play around with my white balance a little bit and see if I can fix it, because it looks very dull, but in actual fact they're quite bright. So you can see the difference between the two cameras. It's really interesting. Love the texture and over the color. The mitts are really nice. Thank you, Dana. It's amazing stitch pattern for stripy handspun. Yeah, I think the stitch pattern works really well. At first I was thinking, oh my goodness, these are really, really busy, but it's actually okay, and they fit quite nicely. Like I said, they're a little bit big in here, and a little bit big across the top of the hand. But I think overall they actually work really, really well, and they're going to be really nice for the summer. And I've made a note on my Ravelry page to knit the size small. So put on the other one for you. You guys know how much I love yellow. I don't generally love yellow and blue together. They're not my favorite combination, because they're complements. And actually, it's quite amazing how well they matched up. Isn't that incredible? It's not terrible, considering I was spinning randomly from fiber I had previously stripped down, and had to sort of find all of the colorways and match them back up again. So not totally terrible. And then I have this little bit left over. Nora has asked for mitts to be matching like Mummy, but I'm not sure. I would actually like to use up some of this stuff that I have, rather than continually having these little bits and pieces left over. So I might actually do that for her, just to use them up, or maybe use it up in some color work or something in the yoke of a sweater for her, because she's asked for a couple of sweaters in all my spare time. Sometimes I feel very overwhelmed by all of the stuff that I have going on, all of the projects that I have, like sometimes you're just sort of like, how am I going to get this stuff done? I'm not sure. So I wanted to talk about my shore cardigan. I'll talk a little bit about the fit, and I've got some yarn here that I've got spun up. So this is what I pulled off yesterday. I know it's super dark, And then I've got this one balled up and ready to go. So this was I haven't been working on this actually because I sort of thought, well, if I'm at a place where I'm at a break in the yarn and I have to attach yarn anyways, I might as well I'm going to open the blinds just a little bit because I was hoping that we would get some light on this, but I don't think that we are. It's just so dark. So I think it actually made it worse. It's hard to tell, hey? Yeah, it's just so dark. Let me just focus the camera. You guys are so patient with me. Where did chat go? There you are. The overwhelm is real. It's so true. It's so true. So this is the Shore cardigan. This is a pattern by Carrie Bostic Hogue. And this comes out of her book, Swoon Maine. And this was my gauge swatch that just went on the floor. So this is the cardigan here. So it's got a high-low hem. So basically what you do, I've made the shoreline vest before, so I know how this pattern works. And like I said, I'm sorry for the darkness. I mean, you can see how dark this natural fleece is. Like, it's so dark. The cameras have such a hard time picking it up. So basically, I wonder if I shone my light on it. Yeah, like even that's not even enough. Isn't that crazy? Phantom. Oh, sorry for the banging. It's just super dark, so you guys can see enough that you can kind of get the gist of it. But basically, you cast on your upper edge and you work your raglan increases. And as you're working, you're increasing stitches along here and casting on stitches at the same time. And then you're working straight down and you work straight, and then you start these A-line increases. And in the pattern, I think it's only called for 2 or 3 times, but I'm actually going to do a 4th set of increases because I did the smallest size for the yoke, because the finished bust for the smallest, for the different sizes. So it's, what are the sizes? 32 3/4, so basically 33-inch bust, 36 and a half, 40, 43, 46, 49, 53, 57. So I started off with the 33, and then I wanted to increase to have the stitch count for the 36. So I cast on a couple of extra stitches under here, and then I've been increasing just a couple more stitches out to finish it up, because my hips are a little bit wider, and if I want to be able to button it, I need that ease down here in the hips. So the back of the cardigan, you can see it's just going to be sort of an A-line. It's just going to increase out. And then you've got the short rows down here. So I'm 7 inches into the body at the moment, and I need to knit until I've got, I think the pattern calls for 15 inches, and then you start the lower short rows, because there's short rows worked at the back for the lower hem at the back. And I'm just having trouble pulling out the words to sort of describe this. And I'm going to knit to about 14 inches, because this is, the finished cardigan is 18 inches long, and I just feel like that's going to be a bit too long. I find cardigans fit me the best when they're around between 16 and 17 inches. That seems to be like a really good length for me. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to keep on working on this until I get down. I'll add this ball today, hopefully, and work on down until I get to about 14 inches. So another 7 inches of knitting. And then I'll start the short row shaping at the back. So yeah, I'm happy with it so far. I'm really enjoying the fabric. I'm glad that I didn't spin ahead and spin a lot of yarn and have just an absolute ton of yarn, because I don't know that I would want to keep knitting with this in other projects in the future. I think I would rather pay it forward and give you guys some of the bats to play with and to make some samples and then knit some toques and stuff, or some mitts. Fingerless gloves would be really great with this yarn because it's just so dark. It's difficult to photograph. It's easy to work with because it's on 4.5mm needles or US size 7s. But the thing is that the to show it on the podcast and to modify it and to get measurements and stuff, I found it quite difficult. Like in here where the raglan increases are, it's hard to go back and see exactly what I've done. Like I can't see, and to count and to figure out where I increased and where I needed to skip increases and whatnot, it's hard to see. And it's just because it's so dark, and I don't have problems with my eyes or whatever. It's just that the yarn, because it's woolen spun, the stitches sort of fuzz together a little bit, and then you've got the darkness on top of it. So I'm excited to have this done. I think it's a really cool pattern, and I really like the aesthetic. I really like how the neck is fitting, and it's just really worked out well. So that is that. I see, Eve, you've got a question, so I'll go back and answer that before we move on, because I've got another sweater I want to talk about. Oh, that's awesome, Eve. You hadn't seen the mitts yet. That's great. So they were a little bit of a surprise. Knitting for a 5-year-old takes less time than an adult garment. That is true. Yes. And Nora's quite tall, but so she needs the length, but at least like knitting back and forth on like worsted weight yarn, it's pretty fast. Hi, Karma. Welcome. What do you do with all your jumpers? Do you have, so you know what? It's really funny, Eve. I've actually donated a lot of them. The ones that I made when I first started knitting, I wasn't really super happy with a lot of them. I was still figuring out stuff like fit and figuring out like how to make things work. And there were a lot of disappointments in those early days of figuring out how to make things work. And so over time, like I would find homes for them. I would donate them to the Salvation Army. I just kind of passed them along. I have a couple of friends who really value handmade items and really value hand knits and whatnot, and I'll pass them on to them. I have a couple of sweaters that don't fit anymore and pass them on to them. Especially the ones that are not quite so high maintenance. So like my hand spun sweaters, I don't tend to pass along. Those become samples, and I keep them vacuum packed for shows. Like if I'm teaching or if I'm doing a workshop or whatever, I'll bring them along. Some of the sweaters that were in Spin to Knit a Sweater for the Sweet Georgia workshop, those sweaters, a lot of them don't actually fit me anymore. They're just, fit issues. Your body changes over time, and I've just got them vacuum packed for sort of for later sort of thing. I'm not alternating skeins on the shore cardigan. No, I decided not to. I didn't even think about it actually. I tend to alternate skeins when I'm dealing with hand dyed color. Even if it's, even if Katrina's dyed them in one fell swoop, and she's done, a dye lot for me, and it's all the same. I tend to alternate skeins in that situation, but otherwise I don't tend to. So the next thing I wanted to share with you, I worked a few shifts in the last week since we podcasted last, and I did quite a few swatches while I was waiting, because parking at work is quite a big issue, and so you have to go early to get parking. So let me just move some things off my desk here, and I'll show you what I did. So this is, so I'll talk about this one first. So this is actually some Disdero Shetland. It's from that pin drafted roving bump that I had that was given to me years ago at Fibers West by Lori of Disdero Ranch. And I had, continued to spin it. This is the pin drafted roving that she gave me. And I've gifted some of it to you guys on the show. We've used it for some giveaways. I've been just in the background, just steadily spinning it up. And a while ago, I plied off a massive skein of 2-ply, and I still had these couple of bobbins of singles, and I had done a little 3-ply sample. So this was a little 3-ply sample that I had done, and I didn't love it. This is washed and finished, but I did end up doing a larger skein of 3-ply, and I liked how even it was. So when you look at 3-ply yarns versus 2-ply yarns, the 2-ply yarns are always going to look a little bit more oval. They're always going to look like the singles are sort of laying next to each other versus around each other, like with a 3-ply. And, 3-plies are very round. And this was the 2-ply that I pulled off. It's a very light fingering, very light. It's almost lace weight. And my plan was to ply off another big skein like this. I don't know what the yardage is on this skein, but I was going to figure it out. And to ply off another big skein like this and do a big hap, and then to over dye it. That was sort of my original plan. And I have this yarn in my stash that's been in my stash for a very long time. Oh, and that was the other thing, was I was loving spinning this. Like, I've been working on it steadily. I've got a couple of bobbins that are tied up in this spin, and I love spinning it. So there's this BFL that I had been spinning as well. Years ago, I finished this, and this is on the round. And my plan was to find a pattern that I could use these two together, because I had enough of this and I had lots and lots of this, and I was going to put them together, and they're very similar in weight. In knitting weight, they're both lace weight. And so I thought, I could totally find a hap or a shawl, something that would accommodate the two. I was thinking about actually swatching for Velicour, because I did pull it out. I'll talk about that later in the show. But I think I actually will do a big shawl. That's it. I'm going to try to find something that's a lace weight, two-color shawl that I could do something with these two yarns together. And if I need to pull off some more 2-ply, I can do that. So that was sort of where I had left that. And I was sitting at work, and I had this 3-ply in my knitting bag. And I had finished up this skein that I just showed you on the short cardigan. So I had come to the end of the skein, and I had forgotten to wind more yarn for to bring to work to keep working on the short cardigan. So that's why I'm at where I'm at the end of sort of a skein of yarn and haven't attached the next skein yet. It's because I ran out of yarn, and I was at work, and it was first thing in the morning, and it was 6:30 because I'd had to get there early to get parking. And so I pulled out the 3-ply, and I had some of my needles with me. I had one of my interchangeable sets, and so I swatched. I was like, I'll just knit a square and see what I come up with. Well, I loved the swatch. So this is knit on 3.75 millimeter needles. And my gauge was approximately 19 stitches over 4 inches. I did wash it. But in the meantime, I did the swatch, and then I cast on. Because I thought, well, I can adjust my gauge if I need to as I'm working. So this is another dark sweater. I'm very sorry. I'm going to show you the picture of it first. So the pattern that I've been wanting to make forever, this is Albini. This is by Orlaine Souche. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And this has been something that I have wanted to make forever. And the reason is because I saw my friend Lindsay, who's Artifacts of Appreciation, on Instagram. So if you don't follow Lindsay, definitely go ahead and follow her, because her Instagram feed is so inspirational. And she knit this sweater for her, I think it was for her grandmother. And it was done in some really, really rustic yarn, and it just sang. It was just beautiful. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I decided to go ahead and cast on using my Shetland. So this very, very similar yoke construction to the shore cardigan, which is kind of too bad that I've ended up knitting the same thing over again. But that's okay, because even the gauge is pretty much the same. So the stitch counts are very, very similar. But that's okay. So I've gotten this far already from this little teeny tiny skeiny yarn. I'm always just amazed at how far yarn goes. And I'm knitting my way down. I'm almost done. I'm almost done the first part of the yoke. And I have another 6 rows in the current section, and then I have a couple, and then I think I have like 4 or 5 more rows in the next section, and then I'll be able to divide for the sleeves. And the yoke is a little bit different for this one. So for the other one, it uses make one. This one uses knit front back. And it's funny, I'll show you under the camera here. It's funny because I haven't done knit front back for yoke increases in years. And I had forgotten how lovely it looks. It's got a really nice look to it. And I know it's hard to see because of the gray, but I'll hold it still and maybe the camera will focus in on that piece of yoke. It's just really, really pretty, that raised stitch, the raised center stitch that you get. And I've just been working away at this very slowly. So I ended up working on it in the midst of sort of not having anything to work on at work. And it was a good thing I did because we had 6 empty beds, which is unheard of. We just sat all day. The interesting thing about what's been happening for us, because we're the trauma center, is nobody's out doing things. So now slowly as we're entering phase 3 here in British Columbia, where people are starting to go out and there's starting to be more accidents, there's starting to be people doing things. We've had an inordinate number of motorcycle accidents actually, and motorcycle accidents that have resulted in death. So we've had a lot of that kind of stuff where people are just being unsafe, which is really too bad. But I'm happy with how this is coming up. So if you stop yoke increases early for a better fit and therefore have fewer stitches than called for, where would you add the extra stitches under the arm? Yeah, so what I do, if I know, so for me personally, when I am working on a sweater like this, and let me just pull this through and I'll just show you with the 1/2. If I'm working away and I'm finding that my yoke is getting to be too big, and I'm finding that the front is, because if the front is getting too big, then the back is getting too big. And if your sleeves are getting too big, then the other sleeve is getting too big. So I tend to work on just half of my dress form to really be able to see. So you have to take into account that you've got a 1-inch button band in here as well. So what I look for when I'm working on my sweaters is that my yoke comes near to, if not meets, the middle of my dress form. And once this is washed and blocked, that's exactly what this will do. It will come across to the front because this sweater is meant to be worn with 3 to 5 inches of positive ease. And so what I do is, if I'm starting to get to the point where it's getting too wide, and I can see with my sleeves that they're starting to get too wide as well, but I still need length. So I know for me that from my collarbone through to my underarm that I need about 6.75 to about 7.5 inches minimum. So I need about 7 inches in here in this measurement minimum for myself. And these are measurements that you need to figure out for yourself. And I just take that measurement. I got Mike to help me. I took it from here all the way to my underarm, and then I compared it to a sweater that fit really well and sort of figured out if they matched, and they did. So 7 inches for me from here to here. So if I'm finding that this area is getting too wide and there's too many increases and it's getting to be too much bulk, but I need length, I'll just knit straight, or I'll work those increases every 4 rows. Or if it's just a problem with the sleeves, I'll stop increasing in the sleeves, but I'll keep increasing in the raglans. So I'll increase on this side of the marker, and I'll increase on this side of the marker, but I won't increase between the sleeves on the inside here. Does that make sense? And actually, interestingly enough, if you're wanting a pattern where she does that, where there's different parts of the section of the yoke that are in sections where you're increasing in different places to learn how to do that, this is a great pattern because there's section A, B, and C. And in section B, you're only increasing on your raglans, and then you increase both raglans and sleeves. and then you increase just your raglans again. So it's a good opportunity to do that and to learn how to do that. If you're totally confused and you've never done that before, to get a really, really good fit. Yeah. Oh, that's too bad, Rebecca. She lost her cousin-in-law in a motorcycle accident in March. So dangerous. They are so dangerous. What is the name of the pattern again? So for this one, it's Albini. So it's this one, Albini, Albini by Orlane Souche. I don't know how to say her last name exactly, but that's how I've been saying it. I'm probably wrong, but that's okay. So I love natural colored fiber as well, Sabella. And I think that's why I kind of got hooked on these two cardigans back to back, because I really love natural colored fleece, and I've been feeling really inspired recently by natural fibers and the colors. And I think part of it was spinning all the silk recently. I've just been really enjoying exploring all of these natural colors and looking at how maybe they can take up some of the dye. This kind of stuff gets me really excited, and I've been looking at shawl patterns, and one of the ones that I was looking at for that combination of yarn, I'll link it for you in the show notes, was this one here. Hopefully I can find it. Hang on. I hope you guys don't mind waiting. So it's Kelly G Knits, A Sign of Spring. And I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. We have talked about it on the pattern, on the show before, because Kelly is one of our really super active community members. And I consider her a friend. And that shawl, A Sign of Spring, is just a beautiful shawl pattern. And there was another one that I was looking at that I thought would really work well, because I need like a true lace shawl pattern. And there was another one that I thought would work really well, and I can't find it on my feed. I won't spend too much time looking for it because I don't want to waste time. But it was such a great shawl. It was kind of like a hap style, and I can't find it in my favorites, but I thought that it would work really well too. So, oh, maybe here it is. Maybe. Is this it? No. I'll find it. We'll talk about it next show when I cast it on. Because inevitably that's what'll happen. So the only thing about this sweater, I was going to say one last thing. The only thing is, because I've already cast on the sweater, because I had nothing else to work on at work, I did get lucky that I got gauge with the pattern. So I am knitting the smallest size, only because my gauge is 19 stitches, and I think what's called for in the pattern is 20 stitches. So my gauge is 1 stitch bigger. So over the course of a 36-inch bust, that will kind of even out to probably about an extra inch of ease. And in the pattern that's showing here next to me, her size is the same size as me, and she's wearing the size small, which is a 37-inch bust, and the size extra small is a 36-inch finished bust. So I thought, well, for the sake of an inch, I'll probably end up with a size that's closer to the size small than the size extra small. So it'll give me the positive ease that I want, because I want to be able to wear this in the winter when I've got my like flannel button-up shirts on and I'm feeling really cozy and it's not raining and I can be out in that, because this is warm. 3-ply Shetland is really warm. Like my hands are getting really warm when I'm working on it. And then the other thing that I did that I kind of messed up on a little bit is I like to have as much of the yarn spun, if not all of the yarn spun, before I cast on a project. And because I was at work with no project, I started knitting before I had finished spinning the yarn. So these two bobbins, I need to spin more to this bobbin. I need to spin a third bobbin, and I need to get a whole bunch of yarn spun to be able to keep working on this. But on the other hand, that said, it also gives me some motivation to keep working on it, because I'm loving working on this so much. So that is good. And we've got our road trip coming up next week. I probably won't be able to get the yarn done for that. There's no way I can get a whole bunch of 3-ply yarn spun between now and then. However, I probably could get another skein done that I could take with me and work on it a little bit more. So, because I have my control card and I've actually found it quite easy to match the yarn so far. So I'm hoping I can work on that this week. That'll be kind of my number one priority this week, is to work on that. So thank you for listening to me wax poetic about that. The next thing that I wanted to share with you was some other swatching that I did, and this is for wool and honey. So this is a pattern by Andrea Mowry, and I did this little swatch this past week. Now this is Custom Woolen Mills. This is a 2-ply sock. It's their CVM. It's a very, very heavy fingering. And I initially swatched on, I think it was like 3.5 millimeter needles, because that's what's called for in the pattern, I think. But I ended up having to go down to 3 millimeter needles, and I still have a massive gauge. So I'm not sure. You can see the gauge here, the swatch here. It's a beautiful fabric. I'm not sure that this sweater pattern is going to work after all, which is really too bad, because I love the aesthetic of it, but my gauge is massive. And I think the pattern calls for a gauge of 26 stitches over 4 inches, and mine is like 18. Like, I'm not even close. And because it's all charted, as you can see, there's all of those honeycombs through it that's meant to be the honey. There's no way that I'm going to be able to modify the stitch pattern enough to make it fit me based on my gauge. So I was really disappointed, because this yarn would actually work really well for this pattern. It's kind of got that rusty tweedy look. I bought this the day that my dad was diagnosed with stage 4, and back in July, from the Itty Bitty Yarn Shop in Whitehorse in Yukon. And I just love this yarn, and it's quite a substantial yarn. It's quite stiff. It's not soft. Well, it's not terrible, but it's a little bit downy. It's CVM, 2-ply, quite firmly spun, but then quite a soft ply. It would be a really great yarn for a garment like this. So I was kind of bummed that that my gauge is off so much, because that, you know, down to 3 millimeter needles, like I don't think I could go down anymore. This fabric is just perfect on 3 millimeters. So I'm gonna have to sort of figure out what I'm gonna do with that, because I was kind of disappointed about that. But I did have a win. The last sweater that I swatched for was this sweater here. And this is Poet, because I'm project planning for next week. So I want to have a couple of different projects that I bring with us on our trip. So this is Poet by Sari Norland. And I actually work with the Sari, which is really cool. It's such a beautiful name. And again, I think I was drawn to this sweater because of the rustic nature of it. This seems to be a theme right now. The Albini is a bit rustic, the Wool and Honey, the yarn is a bit rustic, and then Poet is a bit rustic. And I've got all these yarns in my stash that I want to knit with. So this is Swan's Island. This has been in my stash for more than 10 years. I bought it at my local yarn shop. It was 30% off at the time. And so sitting in the truck, waiting to go into work, because I had to be there so early because of parking, I swatched it up. So this, you can see I'm already absolutely in love with this sweater. It's the Goldenrod colorway. And it's 100% merino. It's a fingering weight. I swatched on 3.5 millimeter needles, and I got gauge. So this is a, let me just find the pattern. The gauge calls for 22 stitches in stockinette on a fingering weight on 3.5 millimeter needles. And that's what I got. And you can see I've got really nice drape. It really hangs nicely. It's just a really lovely yarn. So I'm looking forward to knitting that up, and this will come with us on our trip. So if I'm not done my shore cardigan, that will come with us. This will come with us for sure. And my last project that I wanted to talk about, I love Poet. I was considering knitting this one up. Oh, Elizabeth, we should do it together. I would love to do that with you. Anybody who wants to join in with us. I know I don't usually talk about commercial knits on the podcast. I tend to stick to only hand spun. But I have been cleaning out our house. This has been my multi-year project. You guys have been so patient with me because I mention it every so often. And I have cleaned out the closet under the stairs because we have this massive walk-in closet under the stairs that if you're not careful, you'll hit your head on all of the stairs. Because you know, like a closet under the stairs, you've got the stairs right there. But I organized it all, pulled everything out, and reorganized it last weekend. And then yesterday, our bookshelf in our family room was an absolute disaster. So I pulled everything off, recycled all the paper, went through all the cards that had been stashed on there over the years. And it just feels really good. So the last thing that I have to do is our bedroom closet. That's the last space in the house that has to be organized. There's a ton of yarn in there. So I've been slowly pulling stuff out and trying to figure out what I have and trying to put stuff together. I took my skein winder and my ball winder upstairs, and I've been rewinding skeins of yarn, stuff that I can't get knotted. I've been, putting in the donation pile, or some of it I've had to get rid of. And I found some real gems. And so I'll probably be knitting a little bit over the next little while with some commercial yarn, because I've found stuff that I want to use up and that I want to knit through. So I'm excited about that. Just to rediscover some of the stuff that I have and rediscover some of the yarns that I bought over the years that I kind of have put aside because of the podcast and working so much with hand spun. Because you guys know my love is really to work with hand spun, really. So yeah, they're great sweaters, Dana. Yeah. Oh, keep me posted on what you choose, Elizabeth, because that'll be really fun. If anybody else wants to join in a commercial yarn stash busting make along, let me know and we'll start a thread in Ravelry to share our progress. So I pulled out Velour after waxing poetic about really not being happy with it. Mike helped me last night and we rewound the yarn. It had been on my list all week of things to do, and I just finally took a deep breath and I just pulled it out. Diana had she actually summed things up for me really well, because this is what I had been thinking about through the week, and I wanted to read what she wrote because she's been working on her own spinning and her own technique and learning as much as she possibly can as she gets ready to sort of take her spinning to the next level. And when I was showing it on my dress form, you guys saw how rigid the fabric was, and it basically like stood up on its own. And so she emailed me on Slack and said the following, and I thought it was a really great way of kind of summing up what I had been thinking, and she articulated it a bit better than I could have or did. So she said, I have a thought. You said the yarn has tons of elasticity, and I'm thinking the brackets beautiful stitch pattern combined with the elastic yarn is making the fabric sort of stiff. When you held it up on your dress form, it stood up straight on its own, except when the weight of it drooped in over where it was in excess ease. Even if you go down a size, the total fabric structure may be sort of like body armor. Totally, which is what I was trying to articulate and wasn't doing a very good job of. So thank you, Diane, for being way more articulate than me. Do you think this pattern would work better with yarn that have more drape and less sproing? And the beautiful targi would work better in something like an open front vest that could hang. I'm just thinking this is a great exercise for me as I go through the process of choosing yarns for my own knitting. I think I'm going to make a checklist of things to consider when making those choices. So the thing is, the interesting thing, Diane, is that I think making a checklist and doing that kind of stuff and going through that exercise is actually a really great thing to do. And one of the things that we talk about in Spin to Knit a Sweater over on Sweet Georgia, and if you're not a member of the School of Sweet Georgia, there's an affiliate link down below for YouTube. That's how creators get paid for workshop content that they create. I talk about sort of what are some of the features and what are some of the things that you want to highlight in your garment. So one of the things with Velour that I really loved was that grid pattern. And so you need two yarns that are quite highly contrasting so that you can see the different colors of your yarn, because otherwise it's going to be too monotone. It won't be enough contrast between your yarns to create that grid. The problem is that you then have, because you're slipping stitches, you've basically got two layers of fabric in places because you're slipping stitches along the back. And so you end up with extra strands of yarn along the back. So it's kind of like color work where you end up with like double thick fabric. So you need something that's quite fine gauge, and you need something that's going to drape and hang. I think something that has a silk blend in it would work really well. I actually think that my yarns that I showed you earlier, the Shetland on the round, the yarn, sorry, it's in the bag again. I was cleaning up, being efficient, you know. And the 2-ply Shetland, I think these two yarns would actually work really well in a pattern like that. You could knit them very open, sort of at that open gauge of I think it's 3.5 millimeter needles for that pattern. I can't actually remember. I'll look it up really quick. And you would have that drape that you would need, but also the contrast between the two yarns, which is really important because you need to have yarns that can handle the double thickness of two yarns being carried at the same time. So even though you're only knitting with one yarn at a time, you're carrying that second yarn throughout the process. And so yeah, it's on 3.25 millimeter needles. So you could totally do a yarn like that. Those two yarns that I showed you, that would work really well. A light fingering that you could carry along the back. And she does actually call for a light fingering in the pattern. So I ripped it out and I started a shawl. So I decided in the end that I really don't need any more sweaters right now. I'm really excited about a couple of the sweaters that I'm making. And I kept coming across this pattern again and again and again. And this is an Isabel Kraemer pattern. And I can't remember what it's called. All the Love, I think. Always in My Heart by Isabel Kraemer. I didn't link it in the show notes because I only just started it. But basically it's this really neat pattern that you start off with these eyelets. And it's a super easy pattern to remember. You just need to keep track of which row you're on. So I do have my row marker here so that I can keep going back and forth between row 5, row 7, row 5, row 7, so that I know if I put it down for a couple of days, then I'll know where to start off again. And you work this for a while, and then you get into a really cool slip stitch pattern. So I'll put the link for this pattern in the show note, in the live chat, so that you can click on it and have a look. And so you work this for the first little while, and then once you get a certain number of repeats done, then you add in your contrast color and you work this like slipped stitch, almost like a triangular pattern that it creates. And then for your ribbing, you can either finish off the bottom ribbing of the shawl in this yarn, or you can finish it in your contrast color. You can make a large size or a small size. So I'm just going to see how my yardage goes and see how much I have. I'm not going to delve into a second skein of Ocean. So this is Crafty Jacks, this is Katrina's yarn, Tough and Tender, and in the Ocean colorway, which is one of her new colorways. And this is my hand spun in her colorway Pasuta, spun as a 3-ply fractal. And this was done on my Ashford e-spinner, my Ashford e-spinner 3, which actually I'm going to take on our trip with us, because I'm going to take the battery pack because I can plug it in our car to charge it in the truck. And I can keep the battery charged. And I've got a project that I want to take with me. So I'm excited about that. So this will be the color work, and it'll still show the gradient of the color change. And the neat thing is the sample, the first photo in her sample, you can actually see it's a gradient yarn, and it moves through a couple of different colors of blue. So that's why I kept coming back to this pattern again and again, because you'll still be able to see the fractal move through on this yarn, because that was what I really wanted to highlight with this was, again, trying to figure out what it is that you're doing and what it is that you want to highlight in your yarns. When you're choosing a pattern, do you want drape? Do you want to focus on color? Do you want to focus on pattern? For this, I want to focus on showing the fractal and how the yarn moves through the fractal striping. So that's why I kept coming back to this pattern again and again. And I really like Isabel's patterns. I think they're really well written. So that is that. So I'm just going to work on that a little bit in the background, and I'll take it with me on our trip next week. And if I get a bunch of it done, that's great. But I'm going to take this and sew it. And if I'm not done the shore cardigan, then I will take the shore cardigan and finish that. And then I'll take a spinning project, and that'll kind of round out the week. We're only gone for 9 days. So, and we've got a ton of travel. So we're driving quite far because we're condensing. Our original trip was supposed to be in 2.5 weeks. We were supposed to do it. And we've had to, because of constraints with Mike's work, we've had to constrain it down into 9 days. So we've got a lot of driving, but we feel like it'll be worth it because of where we're going. So fingers crossed. But I will be doing some of the driving as well. So I won't be knitting the entire time, which is kind of sad. Oh, thank you, Diane. She said, sorry about all the knitting time, Frog. Do you know what? I don't mind. I said to Mike last night as we were unwinding, I said to him, oh, this is such a waste. Like was such an intense sweater, and I worked on it for so long, and it was so, there was so much knitting in it. And I was really complaining a lot. And he said to me, well, but you learned so much, and you know, it wasn't the right yarn for the right pattern. And if you forged ahead and finished it, you would have been really mad at yourself. And I said, yeah, that's a good point. And we kind of talked about it a little bit. And as we ripped out, I got more and more excited about starting this. So what I did was, often when I rip stuff out, I will, there will be basically a delay in starting the next project. So I'll rip something out, and then I'll put the yarn in one of my baskets next to my bed, and it'll kind of get left. And so instead I sat and I worked on this, and I got it started, and I worked on it up to where you see it now. And I'm really glad I did, because it got me onto the next project right away, so that I couldn't kind of focus on the fact that I had to pull out the Velour. So it was okay. Is Mike going to knit while you drive? Wouldn't that be awesome? And then I could get like really good progress. I could get all the things done. That would be amazing. If only. He's not interested, poor guy. I've asked him if he wants to learn, and he's always like, no, I'm not interested. He doesn't want a sweater. He likes hand knit socks, and he wears my hand knit toques. So I really can't ask for any more. So thank you so much for joining me today. We've got Queries and Explorations meeting in just over an hour. So I look forward to seeing you guys then. For those who are part of that and are part of Queries and Explorations, make sure that you bring some fiber to play with some long draw. And we'll probably have quite a chat heavy meeting, because we need to talk about all of the things that we've learned over the last 4 sessions or so. So I look forward to seeing you guys then. Thank you so much to those who are in the live chat today who participated. I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you. And have an awesome week. I will see you here next week. Don't forget to get your finished objects for the Made with Love Along into the Ravelry thread. I will link it now for you so that you know where to go. So the Made with Love Along FO thread is here. Of course, now I have to find it. Made with Love Along finished objects thread. Please keep it chatter free. And it is there. And you guys can put in your finished objects. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I will see you next week. Have an awesome week. Happy spinning. Bye, guys.